Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first episode of Intercultural Conversations. I hope this is going to be one of many. I'm just going to add Joshua, our guest for today, on the live, and then just give you some context of what this is going to be about. So, the reason why I had actually thought of this or started intercultural conversations is because I think as an intercultural trainer, it gives me such immense satisfaction when I see people understanding each other when they actually get some cultural context. Hi, Joshua. How are you
Hello,
doing?
I'm good. How are you
Hi,
doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for being here. I was just
Of
giving
course.
the audience some context of what this is going to be about before we start with our interview with you.
Nice.
Okay.
You're breaking up. I don't know if it's my internet.
Am I breaking
Can
up
you
for
hear me
other
okay?
people as well? I can hear you well. Are others able to hear me?
I think so. Maybe it
Okay.
was me.
All right. So, as I was saying, as an intercultural trainer, it just gives me such immense pleasure when I see people understanding each other better when they do get a cultural context of why certain people are behaving the way they are. So, if I'm behaving a certain way with a counterpart who's from France, it's basically because of my cultural upbringing or the culture that I've adapted to. But all this information and this knowledge base that I have, I just feel was accessible to very few people. And I wanted to make it more relatable and more understandable to a much more larger audience. And that's why I thought I would start an Instagram live series because I also think that our brain is like a machine that has different cogs and parts, and each part basically affects the way we behave. So one part could possibly be psychology, one part could be biology or nutrition, or one part could also be your nurture, who were your caregivers, who raised you, and that's the reason why you behave the way you do. And the part that I deal with is culture, and because I feel culture plays a very huge role in the way that we behave or the way our attitudes are towards people, and it moves me. Culture as a subject as well, and I hope with this series I'm able to make people understand each other better. And the reason why for the first episode I also reached out to Joshua was because I think largely he does agree with me when it comes to this. And just to give you a little introduction to Joshua, Joshua is a YouTuber of Indian origins who's currently in France. And he has a passion for languages, and he documents his journey of learning a new language and the mental state that you're possibly in while you're adapting to something new or learning something new. Um, Apart from that, he's also a techie. He is a business intelligence manager at L'Oréal Paris, and it's such an interesting combination of passions, which we will be talking about soon. So, hi, Joshua. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks
Thanks
for
for your
having me.
time. Yes. So, how is it going? How is it in Paris at the moment?
Can't complain. Beautiful city. The city's on strike today. They have a public transport strike, but I bike to work anyway, so I was unaffected.
Okay, that's so common, no, to have strikes in France.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
was that was one of the things I actually had to adapt to when I was in France. The
hmm
number of strikes that there were. I think there
Yeah,
is a website that's dedicated to show you how
yeah.
which
Even the
strike is being held where.
Yeah, even the police website, they have a special place where you can ask
Yeah,
them for help with your own strike, and they'll publish the strikes happening right now. So,
yeah. Actually, that
culture.
says a lot of culture. That says a lot about their history. I think that's a result of the French Revolution that still
Exactly.
lingers. Yeah, and they
hmm
should be very proud of it. And that's one thing that I also learned when I was in France. To voice my opinions, especially if they were critical.
Yeah.
I'm already going to be offending many people here. So yes, Joshua, just, for our audience as well, can you tell us why you got interested in languages? I think I discovered Joshua actually on the YouTube channel called Easy French, and he was featured in one of the videos. And I think French is one of the languages that is very close to you, that you have kind of mastered. Do you think that you learned that particular language because you wanted to be more integrated in the culture of France? Do you think that's the reason why, or was it just your interest?
That's definitely one of the benefits. I was doing a cost benefit analysis because I studied business. It's one of the benefits. No, I think it was really, I have this basketball ideology, meaning why does a 15-year-old boy, why is he so excited in basketball when his classmates are not? It's just that he's a little better than everyone else, and that gives him an edge, and he does more of it, and he gets even better, and he does more of it, and he gets even better. For me, this was the reason why French was such a big part of my life. I did a little bit of it, and I got, in my opinion, pretty good. And then I wanted to do more of it, and I kept doing it for so many years before I moved to France. So when I came over here, I got the ground running. So I think that was really the reason. But one of the benefits as well was to integrate in the culture.
Yeah, and did it help?
Oh, big deal.
Did it?
Definitely. Big deal. Yeah. No, I think, especially with languages, there's this whole aura. I speak about this in my YouTube channel as well. There's this whole aura of impossibility and intellect with language. So many people have tried it. French is, I think, the fifth or sixth most learned language in the world. And we already speak English as Indians, right? In addition to all the other languages we speak back home. So there's this aura of intellect around it. You don't necessarily need to be intellectual or intelligent, but because you did it, people immediately conclude that, oh, this guy is capable, this guy is intellectual, although that's not required. So there's definitely a huge benefit around mastering a language.
Yeah, do you think it's specifically French that has that air of intellect, or do you think there are many languages like that who?
In France, it's French. Like if you go to Germany and you nail their German, or for example, there's this American girl who moved to Kerala and she speaks flawless Malayalam. So I think Malayalam is very relevant in Kerala. So over there, if you arrive and you speak it with the slang, you know the expressions, you know the jokes and the references, instantly they're like, how on earth did you do that? So I think any language, and Nelson Mandela said this, if you speak to me in a language that I understand, it goes to my head. And if you speak to a
Yeah.
language, if you speak to me in my language, then it goes to my heart. So there's that enduring
Nice.
factor as well, and also that intellectual factor. So you just feel like a smart guy if you speak someone's language.
Yeah, that's right. I think if you know another language, especially if you speak in the language of the person in front of you, so many barriers are immediately lifted.
Yeah.
It just becomes so much more easier to understand or relate to the person as well. Even if you come from the same backgrounds, even if you have the same life experiences, but you don't speak the same language, there is still a certain distance. And that's what I felt when I was in France as well, because English was their second language. It would be just so difficult to connect to the individual, even if sometimes you were in the same profession. Right?
Yeah.
So I think it would be, I'm sure it really helped you integrate. I think even if you want to turn into a French citizen, there's an exam that you have to go through. You have to integrate through language and possibly even change your name to be French in order to
you don't need that.
integrate.
There's this new politician called Eric Zemmour. If he comes to power, then we'll have to change our names. But he's a far
Okay.
right guy. But if he doesn't come to power, the elections are this year, by the way. If he doesn't come to
Okay.
power, then I think we are fine. No, but actually working in like a global setup like L'Oreal, I work in L'Oreal's European office here in Paris. And they have a huge network of L'Oreal offices all around the world, in Europe as well.
Right.
So
Right.
what happens is they pick the most capable people from those European countries to come to Paris. And usually they prefer people who speak French in these other European countries and even South American countries. So when those people come over and you're one of the foreigners who arrived and you nail French, this has happened to me over and over again, where people said, they would just say this on a lunch table, Josh, how long have you been in France? And I would go 5 years. Back then it was 3 years. I would go 3 years. And you speak like this. And then just like a joke, they would say, you see, so it is possible. If you tried hard enough, already there's a hierarchy that they set up in their mind. So languages are really extremely powerful.
Oh, yes, definitely. I mean, the thing was that French for me was very difficult initially. I did try learning French before coming, and I think I had this very bizarre idea that I'll be in Normandy So I was in Normandy when I was in France, and Normandy is very close to the UK. Like, they almost share borders, so maybe a lot of people do speak English there. I was extremely mistaken. And then a lot of it had to be picked up when I was in France, and that helped a lot actually. But then, what's your story been like? Like, from India to France, how was your childhood like when you were in India? What was the culture like when you were, your culture that you grew up around, and then you're just uprooted? It's like a banyan tree being uprooted and then putting that banyan tree in a desert where there are cacti usually growing. So, comparatively, growing up in a very different culture and then moving to France, did you find any differences, or do you think, your experience was largely very similar? Was there any differences in, interacting with people, or how you felt?
Yeah, no, I think I was already one of the coming from one of the privileged families in India. My parents took very good care of me, and they provided me with plenty of free time and sufficient
Mm.
tools for me to browse my creativity. So that really comes from a place of privilege. So I think my story is really based on that privilege. So
Mm.
already coming from there, I was having this freedom of thought, this financial help. My dad worked in a bank, and he helped me get a loan to move over here. I didn't have to go and fight on it myself, but he's like, here's the loan, it's on your name, and pay it back when you finish your school. So already this reduces one more pain from my shoulder, because my parents really
Mm.
helped me a big deal. So
Mm-hmm.
that was like the context of where I'm coming from. But see, there are pros and cons to every culture. I don't think there is an ideal culture. So there are a couple of things that India does extremely well that you may not find in France, and vice versa. One of those things are,
Sure.
I think, making friends. For me, was much easier in India, probably because I'm Indian. But no, I think Indians are good to almost everyone else. But this was not necessarily the same experience I had in Paris and in mostly Parisians and in Lille, because they don't have that need. They don't have the need for friendship right now. They have their own little circles, and their culture
Mm.
is that they are smaller in friend circles. And in India, we are larger in friend circles. We know more people in India, and there they are very closely knit, but with only like three others.
Yeah.
So for you to
Yeah.
squeeze into that three others, you're competing with 10, 15 years of experience with each other, and of course you won't catch up to that kind of trust. So that was
Mm.
definitely difficult for me, and I felt so lonely, depressed, wanted to move back. That is definitely a part of the equation. But after you stay here for a bit, and your French gets good, then that becomes a nice icebreaker, and you make your
Mm.
own network of friends, and you don't look as desperate anymore. So that helps. So that was really the comparison for me. Of course, there are negatives in India and negatives in France, but yeah,
Mm.
I'm pretty happy where I am right now.
Yeah, it's great that you are happy. And actually, yes, I think just by mere numbers, right, India is very populated. So it's inevitable that we have such a huge, and all our weddings are huge, usually huge, and we have many friends. Everybody has at least 10 or 15 friends. I think that's a result, of course, of being surrounded with that many people. But also, India is a very collective culture. I think
It
a
is.
lot of yes so a lot of our decisions, even very personal decisions, are taken very collectively. And I think France stands so in between. So we usually compare the neighbors, like the German culture and the French culture, and then and I compare it to India. France is so in between because they are extremely individualistic as well. But then, like you said, they're very close knit to their family. But it depends on the context. For example, in India, if I'm going to get married, for example, I will need to. It's going to be a group decision. It's not going to be an individualistic decision. Of course, I'm generalizing here. Not everybody has the same story, but it is largely that way. And
It
then
is.
that gets yes, and that gets replicated in organizations also. If you see the emails, so if you if you see emails that you receive from your Indian counterparts compared to your French or German counterparts, Indians will always have so many people in CC, right? On CC, even if they are not required to be on CC, they are. So it's a much more collective country as compared to France. And individuals going to that kind of a culture, it can definitely get lonely. And I think, yes, I'm sure language really helped over there in order to, kind of bridge that gap. So what other languages actually do you speak as well? apart
I'm
from
working on my
French?
Dutch and German. They're not that great like my level of French right now, but I'm working on it. I'm less aggressive on at it now than I was in French, so I think I'll take more time. But
Yeah.
then there's English, of course, and in India, of course, the South Indian languages. I was born and
Mm.
raised in Karnataka, so I'm a Kannada boy all in all. So two of those
Mm-hmm.
dialects, the North Kannada one and the Bangalore one. So two of those. And my dad is Tamil, so at home we speak Tamil. My mom,
Okay.
she has roots in Kerala, so there are bits of Kerala Malayalam that I follow. I can speak
Mm.
like a really small bit, but then I hit a wall very soon. There's of course Hindi,
Yeah.
and I've been hugely passionate about Urdu, the calligraphy and all that
Mm.
stuff. So that. There's that.
Yes.
I follow Telugu. I don't count it as a language that I speak, but I follow it. Same with Marathi.
Okay. So, don't you feel like when you're learning so many languages, you do get to understand a bit of the culture as well? So, like even in French, there are so many words that are only specific to France. For example, like the word terroir is only very French. It's with respect to the soil that is used to grow wine grapes, if I'm not wrong, or that's one of the conditions that you do see while you're choosing the wine.
You
Yeah,
can
and
loosely translate it. You're right. You can loosely translate it, but there is an emotion which you'll get only when you speak the language. You're right.
yes, yes, and that's also with Urdu. I feel there are so many words that are
Definitely.
only so specific to Urdu, and it's so poetic. I'm sure it's
Do
amazing to.
you speak any Kannada?
I'm a Shetty, so I speak a dialect of Kannada. I speak Tulu.
Right. In Karnataka, we have this thing. You cannot say it in English. You can't say it in French. You can't say it in Hindi.
Okay.
Like if my someone had to ask me, and let's say my dad has two or three sons. Let's say if someone had to
Hmm.
ask me which of the sons am I, the first son, second son, or third son, in Kannada we would say ನಿಮ್ಮ ಅಪ್ಪನಿಗೆ ನೀ ಎಷ್ಟನೇ ಮಗ. It is so
That
easy.
translates to.
You can't say that in English. It's like the how much NTM, like the NTM, fifth, sixth, seventh, how much NTM son are you to your father? You can't translate it. But why does it exist? Why is this granularity available in Kannada, one of the languages of India, and English, such a popular touted language, doesn't have it? Neither does French. So there's so many benefits to languages. Yeah.
Yes, actually, and you can immediately relate to if you're from that region,
If you
for
said that to
sure.
someone who's Kannada, if you said that to him, you'll have an immediate bond with him.
They'll adopt you. Come, be my nth son or daughter, for sure.
Yeah, you're right. I think the language has a lot of these this localizations.
Hmm,
It's a
hmm,
shame to kind of forget it and kind of universalize everything to Esperanto or to English. It's a shame. It's nice to conserve them, in my opinion.
yes, yes, true. And yeah, I am a bit embarrassed that I don't speak Kannada. I do speak a bit of Tulu, but again, I was born and raised in Bombay. So I do speak a lot of English, Hindi, of course, and a lot of Marathi and Gujarati. So such a cosmopolitan city here, and it's inevitable. You can't not speak Gujarati if you are in
It's a
Maharashtra. And
good,
most of my friends, yes, most of
yeah.
my friends are also Gujarati as well. So yes, and in your journey while being in France and while doing the work that you're doing, did at any point you feel like, of course, you were feeling lonely on a personal level because you were new to the country, the culture was completely new. But did you ever feel that you were in a hostile place, or did you feel, in a sense, that because the way I am or the way I come, where I come from, or because I look the way I do, people are treating me a certain way. Have you ever experienced that happen?
I think my conclusion was that people are treating me this way because of the way I look.
Hmm.
Maybe I was wrong. I think I just never know. You can never judge the intention of someone. You just can't.
Hmm.
So I don't
Hmm.
know for sure. But I think I wanted to be sure, is this going to work out or not? So I just did the most dangerous thing possible at that point. So I remember I was in this church in Lille, and I told them that between my school year and internship year, I'm going to go work on a farm. And these people who are of African origin, they have stayed over 30-35 years here in France, and they have had a different kind of racism which is doesn't exist anymore, but back in the day it existed. So
Hmm.
since
Hmm.
they kind of adopted me with from the church, they were trying their best
Nice.
to help me navigate through this, and said, "Oh, Josh, are you sure you want to go there? Is it run by a white family? Are you sure you're going to be fine?" And they were not making conclusions. They were just saying, "Be like triple careful. Have our phone number. Call us. Should we drop you and
Hmm.
pick you up?" What I'm trying to get at with this is there is something, but I haven't necessarily felt someone being racist towards me. That has not happened. I felt excluded because French people love to speak in French. It's probably because they don't speak English so well, but they love to speak in French. So I have felt excluded at first, but I wanted to go try it out in this dangerous place, a remote village that I can't get out of. And my experience there was excellent. I stayed there for 3 months. My excellent experience. I made the best friends ever. They stayed in touch. They invited me for Christmas. They had a wedding, and a small wedding with like 45 people, and I'm one of them, one brown guy. So when it comes to their capacity to make friends with foreigners, I don't doubt it at all because of that experience. And there are so many experiences after that. But that was the first time I told to myself, no, they are not necessarily excluding me out. They probably did not have the need. I was more forgiving after that experience.
Yeah, I think anything new also, it just takes so much, any person or anything new just takes so much time to understand or to accept as well, right? It just, something as basic as, when you change your phone, it takes you so much time to adapt to that. So, interacting with people is so much more nuanced, and and especially if if you've not interacted with the person of that culture before.
Yeah.
So I remember being in a room I'm an interculturalist with a consultancy called Sirhan in Paris. So I remember being in a room full of French people who were white, and they were mostly older men, right? And I'm in that room and I'm being interviewed for the job, and it's very easy to feel very disconnected or distant from those people because there's no common ground except for our profession, and I spoke very broken French then. So I can also understand when a person who looks like us goes into a very remote area of France where they've never met people who who are from Asia also, probably. So it takes a little bit of time to accept. But however, you can't deny the fact, because even I worked on the vineyards there, and it was, the rural culture and urban culture everywhere is different. So you will find similarities between Paris and Bombay because they are urban. But then, there's huge differences between the rural areas and the urban areas in France as well. And there you could feel the tension. Like I was asked questions, when are you going back?
If you move to Punjab or Delhi, I'm not trying to say that that these are bad people or anything. I'm just saying this is very human. Like I have friends from there who moved to Bangalore and stayed there for 4 years, and they were also mistreated by locals, by the local policemen, by the local authorities. They were also mistreated. So I think that's just a very human thing to do. I think if you learn to adapt to it. Like I remember one of the interviews that I succeeded at was when I looked the guy up. I saw where he's from, and he came from Lille, where I was for 2 years. So there was this very subtle joke I made about the local language, and I made it beginning of the interview, and it started off with a smile, right? And since then he was like, "Are you from France? Are you from Lille?" I was like, "No, no, no. I've just been here for a year and change." Like, how do you know this? So and immediately there was this guy can learn. And so when I made the point later, I'm a quick learner. I won't waste your resources. He believed me.
Yeah.
So I think, of course, there's a disadvantage if you don't adapt to it. But if you adapt to it, you have an unfair advantage.
Almost.
Because if a local did that, it's not spectacular anymore.
True. It's like if a French or a German person or somebody of other origins comes to India, that's the unfair advantage
they have
when they are here. That
exactly.
It's like positive discrimination in a sense. You are benefiting from the difference, or because you're standing out, but that can also be so difficult to stand your ground or to be yourself, especially when you are different. And I struggled with that a lot. Something as basic as wearing loud colors. It's not very French to wear loud colors, especially in workplaces. But then I feel, being Indian, being raised the way I was, my way of expression was through, big earrings or what I wore, or basically colors. And I noticed myself muting that through the years, when I was in France. And then, because that was my version of adaptation. like, okay, I'm adapting to this culture, let me be less loud in that sense. But I found it to be counterintuitive. It's not about adaptation. It's about coexisting. Like with my differences, I would like to coexist in your culture and then add more value or more richness, to conversations or to work. So I don't know if you face that difficulty where when you do feel different, you feel alone
Yeah.
because
No,
not
loneliness is
everybody is accepting of.
No, you're right. No, I think we do have a couple of things going for us Indians. Is one is that we are seen as mathematicians. We are seen as very good at IT. It's a
Mm,
stereotype, but we can use it in our benefit. So when I was looking for which area to work in, the reason I picked IT was cost benefit analysis. This thing works out for me, right? And many of these companies outsource to India, so I could be the linking pin between the two. So if you think from a solution perspective, you can use it like that. But if you think from a negative perspective, because it's true, it is negative. I'm not trying to say there's no negative. It's true. There is discrimination. There is the negative part, of course. But if you
mm,
look at it like this, and what is the best way for me to come off as intelligent, come off as capable, to get the job, you know? If
mm,
you think of it with that point of view, it is possible to crack because there are so many of my friends, Indians, who have also cracked really nice positions over here. Even
mm,
some of what's most spectacular, one of my friends did it without speaking French, and he works with Estée Lauder companies. He did a 1 year course in France from my school,
mm,
and then he works as their marketing manager for Estée Lauder companies
mhm,
in Paris. So and now
mhm.
he moved to Amsterdam. Last year he moved to Amsterdam. He's doing his
He's in
training
tech
there.
as well?
No, marketing.
Marketing, okay.
He's in marketing. But this guy,
Mm,
when he was in France and he got promoted to this position, he didn't speak French. So, in other
mm,
words, he has worked his value proposition so well that it's impossible to deny to him. It's impossible.
mm,
So
mm,
he has done his homework. I asked him how many companies did he apply to, and he had applied to 400 companies. So the kind of experience is rich. He can nail any interview.
mm.
So
Yeah,
there is
with
that
France,
truth as well.
that is the issue though, yeah, with companies. It's very difficult to get hired in France, but it's very difficult to get fired also, of course.
Exactly,
But
because
then
it's difficult to get fired, hence it's difficult to get hired. Once you're
hired,
in,
it's like a vicious cycle. Once you're
right?
in, and nobody can let you go.
Yeah,
Yes, and
exactly.
that's also a part of their history, right? Their laws are more beneficial
Protective.
or protective towards the employees, and that is also actually a result of the revolutionaries in their history, a
But in
result
a
of the
sense,
industrial revolution as well.
I think that in a sense, it's more plural. India is touted as pluralism because we conserve our languages, we conserve our colors, our dances, our food, all of the stuff.
Mm.
But in a sense, their work culture in France is more pluralistic than Indians
You think?
because everyone's included. Once you're in, right? So
There's no option.
yeah, like, and in the company that I work in here at L'Oreal, you'll see people from everywhere. Like I said, they pick the best from their L'Oreal offices around the place. One of the most capable IT infra person that I rely on is from
Mm.
Argentina. She's been here 6 years, and
Mm.
she's a part of the team. She's as much as part of the team as another Jean-Paul David, who is French.
Mm.
So I
Mm.
think there is a pluralistic approach as well. You need to be in the right space.
But I'm going to have two follow-up questions to this, right? So one of them being, um, what's the advantage of this when you have such a diverse team? Because this is basically my job, because there are two sides to this. It's so rich having so much diversity in a team. For you, in your personal experience, what has been the advantage of having people, from Argentina, like you said, from France, or I'm assuming from Africa too, and you being Indian. So what's the main thing you say? You go like, okay, aha, this is
Yeah.
amazing, and this is the reason, the result of diversity.
I'm not just saying this because it benefits me, because it benefits me that they are diverse over here. I'm not just saying this because it benefits me, but in a business school, I learned and read a lot of papers on by McKinsey, I think by Harvard as well, where they point out how diversity is one of the key success factors for a company. And there are this is empirical. Empirical meaning they have done some experiments and measurements and to see if diverse teams are better well off than non-diverse teams. And the conclusion is
Mm,
yes. Now they're trying to guess what are the reasons that diverse teams are more well off than non-diverse teams. And there's a list of these guesses, but they're finally guesses. But empirically, there is evidence that diverse teams are better, well off more than non-diverse teams. So there's stuff like out of the box thinking. If you have 5 people from the same place, let's say they're all from Bangalore, and they're trying to solve a problem, build a product, they will only think from the perspective that they were raised in. They will never think about a Hindi point of view, a Telugu point of view, or a Kerala point of view, or let's even say a non-urban point of view. They would never think about that. But when you have diversity, I come with this benefit of being raised in India. I've seen so many things that these people haven't. So when they say something, and if they esteem me sufficiently qualified to say something, then my inputs are far more valuable for them to sell a better product, because they are now catering to a more international audience. I'd like to take this example of the photography. Kodak was the first one to make the film.
Yeah.
When they made this film, they were only thinking about how do we take pictures of white people. And this is documented well. I'm not just saying this because I'm not white. This is documented well. There's one by Vox as well, where they were saying that earlier these images were only benefiting white people. And when they found out that this is benefiting white people is when they wanted to advertise wood and chocolate. That's when they realized brown people and black people are excluded. So until that time, we were not even in the equation. Now, if we flip it around and have brown people in the team from before, which is impossible, but let's just think hypothetically. If this was possible back then, they would have done the test on one of their other colleagues. Not wasted all this time, you know?
True.
So that's just one example. Of course, it's a very specific one, but this is one example where people from different backgrounds can just make a superior product.
Yeah. Understandable, yes. I think the discussions are much more richer. I think just opinions in general become more diverse, and I can understand the results being more inclusive because of the diversity. But then what's the one big challenge that you think happens when the teams are this diverse?
Well, I don't think there's one. I don't know. I don't know what's in your mind. One big challenge that happens when teams are this diverse. I don't know if there's an obvious one. I really don't know. See, there are challenges. I'm not saying the world is beautiful and we have nothing to work upon. So it's a bed of roses and let's go to sleep. That's not what I'm saying. There's a lot to work upon. For example, the way women are treated even today, many of them still don't feel included. They feel excluded. We are working on that, of course, but in no way is it ideal, right? So
Yes.
Diversity, yeah, not just in race, but also in gender, in background, not
Age.
just age, but also in social class, to make sure not only the people who had the right to education get to work in these jobs. So that brings a lot of advantages. But what were you thinking as the obvious?
Yes, because the thing is, usually when there are such diverse teams, your ideas towards working styles are so different, right? So for you, if you've been working with an Indian organization and then you start go and working in France, there's a style of working that's very different. And that is an impact of culture. For example, India is much more hierarchical than compared to a Germany, which is much more flatter. Just the mere, just like a small observation that I made when I started working with international teams is addressing your superiors as sir or madam. Just so common in India, and that kind of hierarchy is ingrained in us from school. You're if your professor enters into the room, you're standing up for your professor. I don't know if you did that in your school. Yes, wishing your professor, you're standing up. So that in a child's mind is immediately creating a distance. So anybody who's older to me or in a superior position to me immediately becomes more powerful or has more power distance than where I am at. And you compare that to a France, there is such a distinct difference with respect to how you treat authority, especially after the revolution.
So this is very true. This is very true.
Equality, the equality aspect of it. Or
I had a problem in France with my tax payments in 2019. They owe me 800 euros. They didn't give it back to me yet. It's 2022. And for 2020, I owe them 800 euros for my home tax, and I didn't pay it. I know it's going to the same entity, and I didn't pay it. And this January, I got an email saying that you have to pay 10% interest because you're late. So I responded to
Mm.
that saying that I find this extremely unequal, that when you owe me money for over a year, you don't add any interest, but when I owe you money, you are very capable of, very comfortable in adding 10% interest. This is unequal. How do we solve this?
Mm.
They responded immediately saying that forget the 10%, we'll give you your money back first and you don't need to make the payment. So I
Mm.
don't know if that would happen in India,
Mm.
because
Mm. Mm.
paperwork is difficult in India. Over here, the moment you scream inequality and you were right, that's it,
Mm.
because you were right.
True. Yeah.
So there are these benefits, of course. And
Mm.
what you were saying also about the hierarchy thing, I saw this with my first job. It was an Indian company in France, and I came in, I think, the second week of work, and when one
Mm.
of the important guys in the company told me, I sent you a couple of emails yesterday. It was a Monday morning, a couple of emails
Mm.
yesterday. You haven't yet gotten back to me, but take your time, kind of showing that I should have responded by now. So
Mm.
I was hired in France. I'm a French employee now. I have a work permit in France. I was not hired in India. I was hired here. So I replied to him, Indian gentleman. I replied to him saying that, oh, I leave my work computer at work. I'll get to them now, of course. But yeah, feel
Mm.
free to send it to me during the week next time.
Mm.
You can
Yeah, and the
never do
way
that
you
in India.
communicate.
You
Yeah,
can never do
yeah.
that in India.
Also, you can't be that direct in India. I mean,
No.
we come from a very high context culture. We come from a culture where you cannot, especially if it's negative opinions or critique, be direct about it because there's a lot to do with saving face. You want to have better relationships with people. We're so relationship driven, I mean, see,
To
again,
a point, where it
yeah.
feels corrupt, because when the hierarchy, the guy above is relating to you, he's not even fair,
Mm,
so he's not bothered about the relationship as much as you are, because of the hierarchy. But I think it's
mm.
far more egalitarian in France. Yeah.
Yes, and yeah, we are discussing this, and again, I usually repeat during my trainings as well. There's no right or wrong, right? Then, us being more hierarchical is a result of things. There are many benefits of it being hierarchical, and it depends on which industry you are in. If you're in an automobile industry or an industry where lives are dependent on the decisions that the upper management makes, then of course, definitely hierarchy matters, and it comes with merit. And probably egalitarian or having a flat organization may not always be helpful because then there are too many voices. Again, so there's no right or wrong. It's so contextual, and it
Hmm.
depends on what works for you and what doesn't. So I think
You're
we're
right.
we're a little bit over our time. Before we go, um, I just wanted to know. So I've recently realized that a huge part of my purpose in general is to bring some sort of change. It doesn't have to be change like I'm going to change the entire world. That's not how I'm looking at change as. It could be change around me in my immediate circle of influence or change within me as well. And it doesn't have to be very benevolent, but some kind of impact that can help people or um, probably even show people the mirror. So I was wondering if there is anything that you feel you want to change within you or outside.
Uh, in what I want to change the fact that I don't speak Dutch fluently. I mean, in what context do you, are you
It
asking for
can
a change?
be it can be in any context. It can be in the context that you're seeing something that is around you that that needs to be different. That could be with respect to how people are treated, or that could be with respect to how people look at your work, if you want that to change, or something that's within you um, that you want to do better. It could be, languages, or it could be um, what your goals are going to be.
Yeah, I
Has
think
it
for me,
changed?
in the near future, I want to work a little more on my personal projects, because I've been very
Hmm.
focused on the professional side of things, because I had a
Hmm.
debt and I wanted to have a job, and now I have a decent job. But so I think now in the evenings, in the weekends, I'd like to focus a little more on my own passion projects, when it comes to content creation, when it comes to YouTube, when it comes to learning the language, stuff like this. I'm working on a podcast myself as well. So stuff like this, I
Oh.
think I want to focus a little more on that than,
Hmm.
because I think that time will just pass by and I wouldn't have done what I wanted to do. This is what I want to do. So yeah,
Hmm.
I definitely want to change that.
Okay, that's great. And I wish you all the best with that. And before we go, do you want to share your Instagram handle, your YouTube? page name or anything of that sort?
Yeah, if you
Or
guys
even
are
your
interested,
podcast?
yeah, if you guys are interested in learning stuff and following my journey, just look up Joshua Balata. You'll see my Instagram, you'll see my YouTube, and you'll see the podcast coming out soon. I think my partner from the podcast, Lena, also joined the live a second ago. So it's with Lena.
Hey,
Hi, Lena.
Lena.
That we'll be doing the podcast. So yeah, just look up Joshua Balata. You should find a ton of resources.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much, Joshua. Thank you for your time. And I hope to speak to you again
Thanks for
soon.
having me. Take care.
Bye. Take care.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.
Thank you for joining in.